Hi, my name is Ashley Sophia Alfaro, and my project is an interactive dashboard that explores mental health in adults with and without hypertension. So, a little about me. I was born and raised in Oahu, and I'm a rising senior at Chaminade University. I'm majoring in computer science with a minor in data science, and my field of study allows me to combine my interests in public health and art through being able to explore health-related questions while also being able to enjoy the creative side of designing visualizations and dashboards. And I joined SCIPE in hopes to gain more research experience and apply and improve my current skill set. I participated in a summer research program before, but that was when I was still very new to coding and data science. So I saw SCIPE as an opportunity to just build on everything I've learned since then. The reason I chose to do this as my project is because not only is hypertension a global health issue, but in Hawaii, it disproportionately affects Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, Filipinos, and low-income adults. Hypertension is also something that runs in my family. My mom was diagnosed with it, and she currently takes medication in order to manage it. And at the same time, I've always been a strong advocate for mental health and want to spread awareness and reduce the stigma surrounding it. And because of those interests, I wondered if there was any relationship between hypertension and mental health. So for those who may not be familiar, hypertension, also known as high blood pressure, uh, affects nearly half of adults in the United States. And having hypertension increases the risk of cardiovascular diseases such as heart attacks and strokes. There are studies that suggest hypertension may be linked to poor mental health. However, findings remain mixed on that, with some studies reporting a strong relationship, while others find weaker or more inconsistent associations. So my primary research question is how does mental health differ between adults with and without hypertension? And I also wanted to identify which states and demographic groups experience the highest burden of poor mental health among adults with hypertension, and if those patterns differ among adults without it. So I got my data from the CDC's Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. For this project, I specifically used data sets that included the hypertension awareness module, which appears every 2 years in the survey. The data is distributed as SAS transport files or .xbt files, and I chose to analyze data from 2015 to 2023. The key variables used in this project were hypertension status, depression status, frequent mental distress, which is defined as reporting 14 or more poor mental health days in the past month, and the LLCPWT variable, which is just the sampling weight that's applied to accurately represent the overall US adult population. And then for missing data, some states were unavailable, such as Kentucky and Pennsylvania in the 2023 dataset. And there are also values like refused and missing/not asked that required additional cleaning and processing. So I did everything from my laptop on Visual Studio Code, so no high performance computing was used in this project. But the first thing I did was convert all 5 of the .xpt files into .parquet files, and then I loaded the data into a Jupyter notebook using the pandas library and selected variables relevant to my research questions. The BRFSS datasets are label encoded, meaning the categorical variables are represented as numbers. And this screenshot above shows how the data originally looked. So I decided to map the values to its corresponding descriptive labels. And doing this made it easier to interpret the data and reduce the need to constantly reference the documentation and code books. After that, I performed quality checks and verified that all labels had been mapped correctly. And then I combined all the data sets into a single Parquet file. Before building the actual dashboard, I conducted additional exploratory analysis in a separate Jupyter notebook and determined which visualizations to include in the final product. Then I created some dashboard mockups in Canva, and to build the actual dashboard, I used the Dash framework, Plotly for interactive charts, and the Jasmine components for user interface. The source code is available on GitHub, and the dashboard is currently deployed on Hugging Face Spaces. So this link should lead directly to the dashboard, but if that doesn't work, then I'll just show the screen recording. Okay, perfect. So this is how the dashboard looks. In the upper right corner, you can view more details about the dashboard. For this demonstration, I'll look at depression among adults with hypertension in the state of Hawaii, and then I'll just keep the year 2023. So these are the summary cards for Hawaii, and then the choropleth map to compare the prevalence rates across states. And you can also view the ranking, and in this case, Hawaii is ranked number 51. Below that is a line chart comparing Hawaii to the national averages of depression rates, and then a scatter plot comparing hypertension rates with depression rates. And you can also toggle national averages to see if the state falls above or below the national average. And then on the demographics page, it's pretty similar, except it's separated into 3 tabs: age, gender, and race. And each tab contains a bar chart and a line chart. And now I'll go over some key findings, from the dashboard. So for both depression and frequent mental distress, adults with hypertension showed higher prevalence rates than adults without it across most states. In the earlier years, like in 2015 and 2017, high rates of poor mental health were often concentrated in the southeast region of the United States, but rates increased for both population groups between 2019 and 2023 nationwide. When looking at age, younger adults with hypertension, particularly those ages 18 to 24 and 25 to 29, had the highest prevalence rates for both depression and frequent mental distress. A similar age pattern did appear among adults without hypertension, but the rates were generally lower, which could suggest that younger adults with hypertension may experience a greater burden of mental health. And then across racial groups, multiracial and American Indian/Alaska Native adults consistently showed the highest prevalence rates for both conditions, regardless of if they had hypertension or not. And that pattern suggests that there's factors beyond hypertension that may be contributing to mental health disparities in these communities. There are a few limitations to consider when interpreting these findings. First, the survey years are non-consecutive, which limits our ability to observe annual changes. Second, hypertension status requires an actual diagnosis, which means undiagnosed cases aren't captured. And lastly, depression is measured using a single yes or no question, and the frequent mental distress threshold may not capture milder forms of mental health challenges. But to recap, the findings showed that adults with hypertension had consistently higher rates of depression and frequent mental distress compared to adults without it. And it also highlighted demographic groups that may face poorer mental health and could benefit from additional support and resources. Some challenges I faced were narrowing the project scope so that it would be manageable within the program timeline, making sure that my visualizations aligned with and actually answered my research questions, and also learning how the survey weights work. As for growth, this project helped me improve at communicating findings. I also learned how to design a dashboard with user experience in mind, and I gained some experience deploying a Dash app for others to use. For future dashboard development, I'd like to incorporate socioeconomic factors and explore how mental health and hypertension relate to other cardiovascular outcomes. I'd also like to investigate resource availability across states, such as like hospitals and mental health centers. And I think it'd be interesting to use statistical modeling to see how strong the association between hypertension and poor mental health is. As for myself, I'm planning to add data science as a second major, and in the future, I'd like to pursue a career in data science, data analytics, or even web development. Now, I'd like to thank my mentors, Andrew and Hauhan, for all their guidance and feedback throughout this project. I'd also like to thank Dr. Alex Stokes, everyone in the SCIPE program, and the Hawaii Data Science Institute for providing a valuable learning experience. And finally, I want to thank Dr. Sean Cleveland for making this opportunity possible and NSF for funding this program and project. And yeah, thank you all for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Um, Beautiful talk. Thank you. Does anyone have
Thank
any
you.
questions? You can put them in the chat or you can ask away. Lots of claps for you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question. Were you able to find any other data, or is this the CDC pretty much it for this?
For this project, I just used the CDC because it had all the data that I needed for the research questions.
Okay, sounds good.